We're live on Twitch. Check. Live on YouTube. Sure. This is okay. Am I loud enough? I might need to touch this a little bit. All right. Hello, welcome to some Derps Talk About Games. I'm your co-host, Mango.
And I am your co-host, Buddy.
And today we're going to talk a little bit about Unhinged Universes Beyond sets. But before we do that, Buddy, why don't you tell the folks at home what it is we do on this podcast?
On this podcast, we talk about games, and because we've been playing a lot of Magic the Gathering, I don't know, man, it's just on the it's on the mind. It's on the mind constantly. This was a pitch of mine, so I guess I will do the intro here, which is to say that the other day I was in the shower and I was sort of thinking about, I was just like, what are some really like wild universes beyond? Like, how far could they go? We had sort of like danced around this topic a little bit when we were talking about some of the changes, with Magic over the last year and stuff like that. We were talking about kind of like the upcoming slate, about what we were excited for and everything. And I just kind of wanted to put my mind towards some truly stupid, kind of unhinged ideas for where universes beyond could go. And longtime listeners might remember, to get this ball rolling, because we're gonna play this a little bit like the Derpies, where we're just gonna go back and forth, kind of pitching our wild universes beyond sets. Longtime listeners might remember that when we talked about universes beyond in the podcast, maybe like last year at some point, maybe the year before, one of the things we sort of talked about was what sort of weird properties we would actually kind of go for. We all sort of seem to agree that Lord of the Rings, Final Fantasy, Avatar: The Last Airbender, these kind of high fantasy settings are all pretty good for Magic and are kind of inoffensive universes beyond sets, while Marvel Spider-Man, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, Assassin's Creed, maybe like these more normal sort of universes beyond sets are the ones that are most annoying. And the one that I included there, Mango, do you remember this one?
Yeah, is it what I think it is? Is it about about family?
It's about family. Yeah, the one that I included there was the Fast and Furious franchise. Now, listeners of the podcast will also know that in 2018 I watched all of the Fast and Furious movies and fell hopelessly in love with them. I think that they're fantastic pieces of art. But I also think that even though it is a movie franchise that includes numerous mention of a racing competition called Race Wars. That actually it's very sincere, high action setting, where you have these larger than life characters who are excellent at driving vehicles. You could make a very compelling Magic the Gathering set out of the Fast and Furious movies. I also think that because the Fast and Furious movies, there have been like 9 of them, you actually have quite a lot, and it's an ensemble, sort of like thing itself. One of the things, for instance, that really sucked kind of about Spider-Man is like Spider-Man is like a singular character, but the Fast and Furious films, you have Dom, you have Brian, right? But you just have this huge cast of characters who you can like go to and rely on. You have villains from a bunch of the different movies that you can go and make cards for. There's that guy whose name I don't remember in the first movie, but he dies, and it's very sad because that movie is weirdly way too serious about stealing DVD players off of trucks. That guy, he can get a Magic card. You have spin-offs like Hobbs and Shaw and like the Tokyo Drift crew, right? And I would even in fact say that members of the Tokyo Drift crew should kind of be part of the main, like the main set, the main thrust of the Fast and Furious universes beyond set. But I don't know. How does this hit you? What would you look for in a Fast and Furious universes beyond set?
Yeah, so I think part of this is that, like, we agreed that we would kind of do increasing levels of intelligence for this, and I think that this set is not only very doable. I think we already got this set, and it was called Aether Drift, right? Like, like it's the mechanics are well supported. I see how it slots in, right? Like you could just kind of do this, right, and it would be fine. I think this is eminently doable. The only thing that gives me pause is our other favorite MTG podcast Distraction Makers recently had an episode about kind of this legend rule thing that they've been talking about, where like if you have too many characters, you basically have too many legends in a set. That's a problem, and I think Fast and Furious is probably fine, just because it's ensemble, but it's not like crazy wide. Like I guess Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, you don't need like Jenica cards at common rarity or whatever. Um, but yeah, I like basically I actually think like I was thinking about this for some of my pitches too, is that Aether Drift, the mechanics in Aether Drift just kind of work, right? You can do start your engines, right? Like you can do
Yep.
vehicles, right? Um, uh, you can make a couple different versions of these characters, but you could probably have like the chase versions of individual characters, right? Like Dom, like I feel like Dom would probably be like in black, right? Do you think so? I guess this is a question. Do you have separate cards for Dom and like his car, or do you have?
Yes.
Okay,
Yeah. I thought a lot about the way that I would design this set. So I'm going to indulge myself. Firstly, it would be a 10 color pairing set. So it'd be like Ravnica, a bunch of two color pairing. So like white blue is gonna be something, blue red is gonna be something. I didn't have, shall we say, amazing sort of hits, but I did have a couple that I wanted to pitch here. One of them, blue black, would be Han, which is simultaneously because I'm the magic designer of this incredible set, and blue black is my favorite color pairing, and Han is my favorite character. But I also also think it speaks to the fact that Han is sort of this everyman who can blend in with a crowd, and he's also good with sort of like a sniper rifle, right? And I was thinking about this. I was thinking about this effect, right? Like, okay, what are the different kind of like color pairings? And as I went through and I started assigning these to both the main crew. So I was thinking about like the main individuals on the Fast and Furious on the Fast and Furious crew. So for instance, Letty I had as green black, because green black shares sort of like a graveyard focus with like milling stuff into the graveyard, reanimating it, right? Like regrowth. And Letty famously comes back from the dead. She dies in the fourth one. Or sorry, she dies in the fourth one and she comes back in the sixth one, which I think is, which I think is sweet. The blue red I had for not Roman, for Tej, because he's the mechanic and you can do artifacts, right? So you can kind of make a blue red artifacts theme around that kind of stuff. I had red green as Roman, because red green I think of as sort of strength, but also braggadocio. Like it is simultaneously muscle bound and braggadocious, which is exactly what Tej is good for, what Tej is sort of good at. And I just went through, I was looking at these, and I actually kind of think it the Magic the Gathering universe maps pretty insanely, or the color pie maps pretty well to what's going on in Fast and Furious, specifically because Fast and Furious has very fluid morals, right? So, for instance, one of the problems with something like Spider-Man, or like the Marvel set in general, is that like the association between white and black for like heroes and villains is very strong. But the Fast and Furious movies, right? Like they are fundamentally criminals, right? You can make heroes out of black, you know, commanders essentially, right? So Dom, for instance, I had Dom on white black because he simultaneously represents sort of the communal family. He represents family, right? That's the white side of him, but also black in the sense that he is a criminal and he does crime. He does crime sometimes, right? And I was just thinking about all of those, and it was kind of nice. So this is the most normal of my pitches. A couple of extra pieces that I wanted to put in. Number one, I would like there to be a card for The Rock flexing out of his cast, where you give a creature indestructible and then also have it, deal damage equal to its power to something, like have it fight target creature. I think that would be really sweet. I would like there to be equipment cards for the wrenches that Jason Statham, that Shaw and Dom use in their street wrench, fight at the end of Fast 7. I would like there to be a card for the DVD players. I think that there should be a card that is just like stolen DVD players or something like that, and it just calls back to the very first. We just have to bring something from the very beginning of the franchise. And I also would like the stunt in the very first movie where the car drives under the semi truck. I'd like that to be represented in a card somehow. And I couldn't think of a good design, but I just think that you should put that on a card, and I would want that. I would want to see it so fucking bad. Anyway, so that's my first pitch. Fast and Furious, the Universes Beyond set.
Yeah, some thoughts on my end. I think you could do something very cool for like commander purposes. Is you do partner with drivers and their vehicles.
Oh, that's an amazing idea.
Yeah.
I didn't even think about that. Holy shit.
And you could even do a thing where it's like, Dominic partners with any, muscle car subtype, the legendary
Dodge
vehicle.
Charger.
Yeah.
You would probably do muscle car. Yeah, you're
Yeah.
right.
But like
Dom does muscle cars, Brian does imports.
Yeah, but like something like that where like, you can basically you can give a little bit of variation by like letting you pick like one of the, like I assume there's more than one Dominic, there's probably more than one vehicle for him that you can put in the command zone. Other thing, the thing that popped in my head is like an enchantment called Race Wars. I don't know what it does, but like immediately to the ban list, but yeah.
I like the idea of repurposing some Aether Drift mechanics, especially max speed, because
Yeah.
you know why
Oh, yeah.
I would love this? Because you could then also have a card that's probably in red, and it's like 1 in a red, and it is Nas, and it says set yourself to max speed, like you lose 5 life or something like that, right? Like, you could just immediately go to max speed without having to do the things by hitting the Nas button. How sweet would that be?
Yeah. That or like like something like a 10-second car, whatever the line is, right? Like, and like it's like you automatically advance up the chart regardless of whether you meet the advanced speed things. It's like an enchantment or something. There's like a saga that could be cool.
Oh, that's actually an amazing idea. You could do something like, man, now that I'm like thinking about this, there's so many good fucking card ideas. Because another one I was thinking about is Race for Pink Slips, right? Which is a huge thing in the first movie. You could have like a blue, typically a blue control effect is probably about 5 mana, but you could discount it and you could go Race for Pink Slips if you if you're at higher max speed than your opponent, gain control of a creature that they have or something, and you would have a discount. So the idea would be that because you're playing max speed and your opponent isn't, you get to steal one of their things a little bit cheaper, like for 1 mana less. I think that design like that would be amazing. One of the big problems I think with this set that really sucks is that you would also have to reach out to Corona for the IP rights to Coronas, because I would also really want to make sure there's a food token in there that is an ice cold Corona, and I would probably also just make a card that's some reference to you can have any beer in the house as long as it's a Corona. Love this. Okay.
Yeah, like I'm imagining like the offer version of this was like the name of the food token is like a cerveza, right? And it's just like like it's just like a bottle with like a white and blue label, but like no text on it. It's just kind of like serial number filed off version,
Yeah.
or like the King's beer, right? Something like that, or like Crown beers, something funny like that. But
hey, how do you feel about the legendary commanders from TMNT? Not commanders, but just like the legendaries that are like Raph and Mikey troublemakers, right? Where like 2 characters team up on 1 card. Because I feel like you could also probably do some of that. You could do Dom and Letty, obviously, sort of like Aragorn and Arwen.
yeah,
You could do Dom and Brian. I would love to see a Dom and Brian card. Especially because I feel like that's how you'd get into 3-color commanders probably, right? So Dom and Letty would be white, red, no, I'm sorry, white, green, black. So it'd be Abzan because Letty is green black and Dom is white
Mm.
black. And so when the two of them sort of like share a color fixation, you could get a 3-color. That would be an amazing cycle. You could go through and do a bunch of those.
Yeah, no, I go back and forth in my head because this is gonna tie into mine. Is like, do you want to do either like partners with like kind of swappable pieces of the partnership, or do you want to do like a dual card like that? Um, and I think either of them works. You know, it's a thing. I think that's fine. Which maybe is a good launching point into mine, which is again going to be comparatively normal for this first one, which is Shrek, which I think would be like honestly, I think again the tone isn't right for Magic, but like you could do this. It's basically Eldraine, right? And I'm thinking you could just kind of get a lot of those things for free, right? Like you already have like the Gingerbread Man, right? You have those mechanics. You could pull that in. I was thinking since Eldraine tends to be very kind of monocolor focused, it's like one of its things. You kind of get around that with some of the commander stuff by having the Eclipse style like two-faced cards, right? Like you have Shrek, like human Shrek on one side, which is like white, and like green Shrek on the and Shrek, you know, monster Shrek on the other side, which is green, or maybe black. You know, Shrek lives in a swamp, and so like I go like he feels very green black on kind of like themes for me, like. But maybe I'm getting this wrong just because like he lives in a swamp, but that's basically the only thing that I think is particularly black about Shrek. But you kind of have to acknowledge that. But I was thinking that like, you know, Donkey and the Dragon would be like your red blue combo, right? What other things was I thinking of? Like basically there's enough classic fairy tale stuff that you can just like pull stuff out of Eldraine and give it new art. I think going on an adventure would be like you could do some cool stuff with that, right? Like you do like, you know, summations of the plot. The only thing I wish I had done in preparation for this, and I ran out of time, was watch Puss in Boots because I haven't, and I hear that movie is very good. And I'm sure there's
Both
a lot
of those movies are insane. The first one and the second one are very, very good.
and I'm sure there's something you could mine there for stuff as well. With different cards. What else do I have to say about this? I just think that like it would be like Lord Farquaad as like I think you play Lord Farquaad as like Azurius. I don't know. That's just like the thing that popped into my head is like, you know, he's very kind of legalistic and, you know, very kind of maybe you do blue black or maybe you do you do Azorius, but I think Azorius is the way to go. But I also think you want, like I said, you want to kind of focus monocolor. I think part of the problem here too is that like to your point about like Marvel being a little too morality focused, I think here it'd be a little bit hard to kind of get people out of like white and green. I think a lot of things are gonna fall in there because it's like a lot of like big things and a lot of good themes. Like a lot of the villains are otherwise, you know, like twist on a good character that happens to be evil, right? Like it's like the fairy godmother and Princess
Yeah, I
Charming.
wonder if you could maybe do like 10 of the color pairings or something like that, but then have, because this was something I was thinking about for another thing that I won't get into because I didn't go with it, but it was just a thing I was thinking about, which is like you could have heroes be allied color pairings and villains be enemy color pairings. So for instance, you could have Farquaad as like Orzhov, like white black, but Shrek be Selesnya, like white green. And the representation of, okay, white green, they're allies. That means that this is a good guy, and you would have whatever Puss in Boots and Donkey and Fiona, and you would need a fifth one. I don't know, whatever. Who cares? And then you could do a bunch of the villains doing the different enemy, you know, like enemy side color pairings. Like you would maybe have the fairy godmother. Maybe you could do like green black. And then who's the villain in the third one? Rumpelstiltskin, right?
Oh yeah,
the villain.
yeah.
I don't know what colors he would be.
I
But
think
I was
there's
just, whatever.
I think there's a card for Rumpelstiltskin already, right? Like because I think he's going in my, or like a Rumpelstiltskin like character that's going in my Maryland deck. Yeah, in the chat, I When You Lose is saying that Farquaad should be black red. I don't know. It feel like in the first movie he kind of like repossesses a swamp, right? Like that feels very blue to me, right? Like legalistic. You in that way. And so, I could see it being Demir, being blue black. Right? I think that could work. I think the dragon's obviously red, but that's because all dragons are red, right? But yeah,
I mean, there's dragons in every color, but though I do agree, like dragons are stereotypically red, sure.
yeah,
And also, I think that there's a thing. I was thinking about this earlier, and we'll talk about this on my next one. How much the aesthetic of this, like the color associations with the property, kind of matter for Magic. So, for instance, when we talked about this a little bit with Avatar, in my mind earthbending is not green. Earthbending is like the Earth Kingdom is like a very white, it's big, orderly empire,
sure,
right? You know, and so I sort of chafed at the idea that Earthbenders were green and that Earthbending was a green effect in the Avatar set. But like, I do recognize that in Avatar, Earthbenders they have green all over them, right?
right,
That is
yeah,
the color that we associate with the Earth Kingdom. Similar for the Fire Nation in red actually made more sense. I wasn't as mad about that one. Waterbenders was also one that felt a little bit weird to me. You know, waterbending and blue didn't necessarily kind of like match, because like, I don't know, there's a whole thing about blue with like technology or whatever, but like the waterbenders are traditionalists, right?
right,
You know,
yeah,
like the waterbenders aren't the ones who are innovating and making these gigantic like airships or whatever else. But also at the same
yeah,
time, I kind of recognize that this is just like me
yeah. It's
splitting
called Island.
hairs.
The waterbenders have to be the watercolor, right? Like,
Yeah, exactly. And like the airbenders becoming white, like that was also sort of like fair enough, you know. Okay, I
yeah,
get that you sort of just have to like kind of jam the
the,
IP in there
yeah,
sometimes.
the square, you know, the round peg has to go into the circle hole, right?
Mhm.
Kind of deal.
But there's this like question in my mind of like, okay, if the iconography of the thing is red in the property itself, do I need to represent it as red, even if it doesn't really like make sense in Magic, which is, I don't know, complicated to answer.
I think it needs to be pretty. I think it needs to be pretty. Like if it's important, I think to the image, right? Like I think you get away with like a, I don't know, Dante from Devil May Cry has an iconic red coat, but I don't think he needs to be red. I think he probably would be red anyway, but like stuff like that, right? Where like the color isn't necessarily a big part of it. Um, Everyone Ulysses points out in the chat that, you know, a friend from the cast, Charles, points out that like there's a bunch of water cards in blue, and I think that that's fair enough, right? Like Leviathans
Yeah,
and Merfolk are all in
I do
are all in blue.
recognize that the colors are pretty malleable. My instinct when it comes to Shrek is that you could just pull it up into DreamWorks. Do you know what I mean? In the same way that
Oh,
there's like Final Fantasy, like what if you just made a gigantic set and you also included my favorite, you know, you could have Kung Fu Panda in there, you could have How to Train Your Dragon in there, which would be a pretty banger, you know, like a pretty banger set. You could get some synergies between the dragon and also, right, uh
the B
and
from B movie.
also the beef from we could get the snail from Turbo in there, you know, have a little max speed, you know, just like a one-off, a little cameo mechanic from the max speed. I would be pretty okay with that for Ryan Reynolds' Turbo.
Legendary movie Ants. Yes, that would be. Oh man. Uh. Anyway,
Woody
you
Allen
know.
ant. I don't even remember that fucking ant's name. I just remember these voiced by Woody fucking Allen.
All right. Well, I think that's enough for Shrek. Why don't you?
Okay, are you ready for this next one? Okay, this next one. All right. I was thinking a lot about IP, and I was thinking about, you know, these IPs that Magic is going after are really big and they're really expansive, but they're also pretty, you know, they're high profile and kind of expensive. But I actually think that there are ways that if I'm Hasbro and I'm looking for something that has that pre-awareness, right? Like this is the value of an IP. Everybody knows what Marvel is before you show them any of the Magic cards. They have that pre-awareness. And I was trying to think, I was like, okay, if I were to go find pre-awareness for stuff that is not IP owned by companies you need to license from, you can just do it. There's actually quite a lot of that, Mango. And it comes from history, okay? So my pitch for my second Universes Beyond set, Magic the Gathering, World War II, okay? We know that the average age of a Magic the Gathering player is 35. They're cresting into that old man era where we're going to start getting really into fucking World War II history, like all of those guys at the, at the Northern Conspiracy. Magic, don't lean away, lean in, okay? I think that this set, it has 5 factions, we would call them, but we all know who they are. Okay, we're going to use Axis and Allies for this. It's the United States, it's Britain, it is the Soviet Union, it's Imperial Japan, and it is Nazi Germany. And the way that I would design this is that these are all allied shards, right? So 3-color allied kind of groupings. The first one that I decided on basically immediately was red for the Soviet Union. And this is where the aesthetic thing was so hard. I was like, man, do I think that Jund, green, black, red, is a good representation of the Soviet Union in World War II? And I decided, you know what? Fucking yeah. Okay. First of all, this has the no step back policy with that's like black all over, right? Obviously, it's called the Red Army. Obviously, the army itself is pretty aggressive. But the big thing that I really kind of tapped into and loved sort of most of all is the sort of just raw power that green represents and the raw manpower that the Soviet Union was able to bring to bear against Nazi Germany. So those were red. That was the first one I decided on. The second one I decided on, probably not going to be a surprise. It's Grixis. It's Nazi Germany. It's black, red, and blue. The blue is a nice touch for Nazi Germany because, they have the aggression and they have that kind of like willingness to sacrifice at all costs that comes from black and the aggression from red. But they also had that technological piece of it, which is represented in the blue, which I think is really, really sort of like powerful, and sort of a valuable, sort of indicator, right? The next few after that were a little bit harder to come down, and so let me know if you have any notes on these. I used white for
what do you have for the United States? Because there's one answer. I don't know what the name of this slice is, but it's got to be red, white, blue. No, I don't know if that's like a real.
So that's an enemy wedge. Okay. Red, white, blue is red, and it's 2 enemy colors.
Okay.
Which I did think about, by the way. I actually thought about doing this as enemy wedges, but I sort of decided that I think it made more sense as the allied wedges or whatever. For the United States of America, I actually had green because Naya I think of as just like the biggest, it's so stompy. Okay, it's you get big boys and you put them into play, and that made the most sense. Plus the color for the U.S. Army was green, right? Like, I think that, you think of you look at a GI, you think green is just the color that they're wearing. Like a Sherman tank is painted green, sort of all of that stuff. White is what I use for the British Empire, just because, as the kind of dominant hegemony at the time of the outbreak of World War II, I think sort of white represented that best. Plus it had the blue for sort of, the technology pushing that they're doing on the aviation and sort of like naval side.
I think pretty well captures like the intelligence aspect, maybe, or is that more?
Yeah, that's also true. Yeah, because this is where you're gonna have cards for Alan Turing. Obviously, you have to have an Alan Turing commander, right? And then also green kind of just represents that power of the this sort of might of the English Empire that they're able to bring to bear the colonies.
So you have the United States as what? Green,
white, green, red.
White, green, red. Okay.
Which I think makes most sense because it's when the U.S. gets involved that really they start to put the U.S. is fighting on 2 fronts. That's real red. Italy doesn't count. This is Axis and Allied rules. Italy's too minor. They don't count. They're not considered. They're not part of the factions. Maybe there's like a couple. You'd have like a Benito Mussolini character like card in Germany.
Oh, I would say it would be fun to do like, if you could like figure out how to do like minor powers as like enemy wedges or something like that. The thing to me.
Yeah.
the thing to me is that like I feel like there's some amount of mismatch here because I feel like Britain would I'd probably put them as like white, blue, black, right? Because that's like they're mostly the intelligence in World War II, right? Like they're like that kind of like I feel like that wedge is very tall, whereas like I chafe against Soviet Russia being green because I don't view them as tall, right?
So I had white, blue, black, which is the blue allied pair for Imperial Japan, and the
Okay,
black in there is so obvious to me, which is like kamikaze sacrifice,
sure,
like pilots and stuff like that, right? Like this indomitable, kind of like I don't know. You could make like a whole aristocrat strategy around kamikaze
yeah,
kamikaze planes and stuff like that. Plus, they have the blue of their naval and air power, and sort of the white is really the representation of the rigidity of imperial kind of like Japanese sort of structures. I was a big fan of putting them on blue. Anyway, some other mechanics I really want to lean into. Number one, battles. Okay, love this for the return of battles as a mechanic. We haven't seen it since Phyrexia All Will Be One or whichever one of those, right? Where you give your opponents this little permanent and it has a couple of counters. You could have so many of these. The Battle of Midway, right? The Battle of Guadalcanal. You could have the Battle of the Bulge, right? Like all of these iconic battles. But this is the part that I really love about it. I love the idea that you would have different battles from different sides. So
mm,
you could have a Battle of Midway that is the Japanese version of the battle, where like you're doing alternate history in Magic.
mm,
In Magic, where if the Japanese win this battle, because it's the Japanese flavored, I don't even know how you would say this, right? But you would have the front face of the Battle of Midway would be the same for both the Americans and Japanese, but when you flip it, it has different ones. And the American one would do something that is, like a stereotypical of sort of like, I don't know, whatever their colors. And the Japanese one would do something stereotypical of their colors. So for instance, if the US is Naya and Japan is Esper, they have this overlap of white. So the Battle of Midway would be a white card, and they both have that same front face. But the other sides of them would be different and unique, and they would be two technical different cards. I think that's pretty fucking wild. I think everybody would kind of hate that design, and they would probably be right to, because it's truly ridiculous and stupid. But I also think it's awesome, okay? And I love the idea of building a Universes Beyond set around real battles. Now, there is a problem with this set, Mango. You might be able to guess it.
yeah. It's like how do you put any of the German army cards into production, right? Like,
And the answer I came up with is the paradox answer. You don't use any swastikas.
you just use
Okay?
iron crosses.
You just use iron crosses. Yeah. Hitler obviously has to win. Yep, there would definitely be a number of Hitler cards. One of the cards I would really want, actually, that would be pretty important to me, kind of like Zuko Conflicted, in the same way that, in the Magic the Gathering set, you have Zuko Conflicted, which is not really a card. It's not built to be a commander. It's not, like, really all that good in any deck, but it just flavorfully really captures what's going on in kind of his brain. I would want to make a card like that for Hitler, but it ends with it sacrificing itself, and it would be Hitler in the bunker. Okay, I would really love, and then I would make a commander deck about Hitler in the bunker, where it's like, maybe I would make this like a saga or something, where after the third stage of the saga, you have to sacrifice Hitler because he shoots himself in the head. Anyway, so that's my pitch for my second big Universes Beyond set. Universes Beyond. We would call, what you would call it, Universes Beyond Heroes of World War II. What would you what are your notes?
My notes are that this is interesting. It's just like there's so much here. There's so much here to mine, right? Like there's so, like Chris, like the thing that's been stuck in my head since you first said it is that like I feel like Soviet Russia should honestly. I feel like there's like a strong white weenies theme you could get going there, right? Because it's like it's a very
True.
wide kind of thing. Although I don't think like white red I feel it's typically done is just like not right for the Soviet Union. I don't think, but like white and red is kind of like little boys like going white that was a weird way to say that. Like little creatures going wide.
Just little guys. Just little guys.
Little guys.
Around,
thank you.
You know, fucking shit up.
Yeah. No, I think it'd be. I think it'd be interesting. I feel like you'd have to tune around it. I do think the way you do the Hitler in the bunker thing is you have it be like a saga that you play, but the last step is like destroy target commander or something like that, right? Like,
oh my god, yeah.
Like you have it be your like you play it and you know it's, and the third it's like a ticking time bomb to kill the commander, and I think that would be the way to do that card. Trying to think of like you just like make the atom bomb like an Armageddon type thing, right? Like type of deal. You make it like what do you like make it like mass land destruction, like exile all lands, right? Like
it'd be like world fire or something like
that.
Yeah, I totally get that.
Yeah.
I actually think that the way that I would do the Manhattan Project would probably be something like, do you know Helix Pinnacle?
Oh, yeah.
You pay a bunch of mana into it, you win the game. It would be something kind of along those lines.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Less like, but it would be something like, you can pay mana to put counters, and when it has like 40 ingenuity counters on the Manhattan Project, destroy all permanents target player owns or something like that, right? Like just like something that is win the game, kind of like brutal, but also represents kind of like the destruction of the atomic bombs, which is sort of fucked up to put in a Magic card. But hey, listen, we're there, we're deep in it, Mango. Okay.
I would say, could you do something like 40 counters on it, exert, destroy all permanents for target opponent, and then at like 80 win the game. Like that's like the Hiroshima and Nagasaki right there. Yeah, I think that could work.
I also think that could work. One other thing I wanted to mention, for my Heroes of World War II set, I would change slightly the designation of spacecraft to like ship or starship or something along those lines, because I would want to differentiate between sort of tanks and airplanes, which in my mind are vehicles, and ships, which in my mind would be starships. So you would use sort of the starship rules for crewing, or stationing, right, where you would station the Bismarck or something like that. You would station the Enterprise, right? That's actually a bad one to use, but it is like the Lexington, or something like that. The Yorktown, any of these big aircraft carriers, you would station those. Whereas with aircraft, you would traditionally sort of like crew those. And then I would also probably want to do something. I was trying to think about this, but I would want to make tanks like a thing where you can permanently station them. I was sort of thinking about how aircrafts, it makes sense because you fly them in sorties, right? You one turn, I tap my pilot, he gets up in the air, boom, my aircraft attacks, but then it has to go like land and refuel and all of the rest of that. But like a tank is something that you don't live in like a ship, which is what is represented by station, but it is something that you ride in your tank. That is part of your sort of like campaign for a long time. So I would want to create a third designation that's kind of between them, which would say that you could kind of like crew this thing into a creature, but like it doesn't end until you choose to untap the creature on your untapped step, or you do something like at the beginning of your upkeep, you may untap all creatures crewing this thing and it's no longer a vehicle, right? So if you want to uncrew the tank, you sort of have to like wait for sort of that moment. So that was something I was thinking about, was the designation between the three different mechanized pieces of warfare.
Yeah, so, I feel that.
Okay, hit me. What's your next one?
Before I get to my second one, I do want to call out a couple of suggestions from the chat, which is, Charles said The Office and/or fast food. I don't know enough about The Office, but I think fast food is a strong one. I think that could work. And then Charles said that Judy said Chinese dynasties, which I think would actually like that sounds like a thing that they would do, like just like
They
you know.
did Three Kingdoms, right?
Oh, did they?
The premise, yeah. There was a long time ago where they did Portal Three Kingdoms, is what they called it,
Okay.
which was like the first foray into into this. So there are cards that you might have seen some of these, like Imperial Recruiter.
I was gonna say, is the
that?
first Universes Beyond set Arabian Nights, right? Like but yeah, no, that makes sense. But for my second one, this is more of a class of sets. Basically, it's kind of like these are like actor or director universes. The first one obviously being like the Jeff Goldblum verse, or like the Liam Neeson verse, or the Nick Cage verse, or like these the five they came up with are those three actors, or the Sam Raimi verse, or the who did I have as the other director? There was a director I had in there that I cannot think of now that I thought would be pretty great for like a set of
Scott, Steven Spielberg. I'm trying to think. David Fincher maybe would.
So
Ridley Scott would be kind of insane. You'd get Gladiator, Blade Runner. Ooh, killer movies.
Yeah, but like
Alien. Oh my God! Wow, holy fuck.
I think the director ones, maybe I'm a little bit less crazy about, because you just pull in so much, right? Like you pull, but like the idea of just doing like Nick Cage, and you get like Nick Cage from Face Off, you get Nick Cage from
National Treasure.
Sure. You get Nick Cage from The Unbearable Weight of Massive Talent, right? Like you get Nick Cage from Mandy, right? If you do Liam Neeson, you get Darkman, you get Qui-Gon, you get
oh my God. I forgot. Holy shit. Qui-Gon is huge.
Who's the other one? What's the one where his daughter gets stolen?
Taken, yeah.
Taken. You get Frank Drebin Jr. from the new Naked Gun movie, right? Like
Did you watch that movie?
I watched it on a plane
recently. It was so fucking funny. I love that movie.
Does every card start with that actor's name? Like the actor's name? I feel like you make it like the subtype, right? Like like Qui-Gon Jinn, legendary Liam Neeson or something like that. And I think this would suffer from like the kind of like, well, everything's a legendary creature. Like it's hard. Like you can have moments, right? Like I want to take his face off from Face Off, and you make that. It's kind of like maybe a Skin of Murder or something like that, right? Or exchange control of two target creatures, that kind of thing. And you could maybe dip into the minor characters a little bit, but I do want to keep it pretty actor focused, because otherwise you kind of get too far into the other properties. But that was just like this is maybe a shorter one, but I think it's just like such a rich idea for something that's like not particularly real. I just think there's a lot you could do there. The problem, Charles says, the problem with actor versus is too creature heavy, but director versus could work. The problem I see with director versus is that like part of this was inspired by Red Letter Media just did like a ranking all the Sam Raimi movies, and I think that like there are like some of those that like some of the Sam Raimi's movies are already Universes Beyond sets, right? Like Spider-Man, and some of the and like you just like you said with Ridley Scott, you just have too much that you're pulling in. The thing I am worried about vaguely is this could be a real thing. Like we had like so far all of the celebrity Magic players are like not actors, right? You've got Post Malone, you've got like that Olympian, like cracking packs at the Olympics. But Post Malone, you can't you can maybe do like a one-off card for. But if like Timothy Chalamet turns out to be a big Magic fan, I'm sure we'll get like a Duneverse like Bob Dylan set, something like that.
Listen, you get a bunch with Timothy. You get Willy Wonka. You'd get the gay guy he played in Call Me by Your Name. That's sweet. You'd get Interstellar, which he was technically in. I think that was his first big big break. You could get a lot with the Timothy Chalamet verse. I also had the thought about sort of directors. My thought was Steven Spielberg, which we have done a piece of, because there has been Jurassic Park, and there has also been Jaws. But I was sort of like, man, with Steven Spielberg, you kind of get like an insane set of bangers. Because you get you just get like a bunch of big like IP stuff, right? Indiana Jones, Jurassic Park, Jaws, you get all of those movies from like the mid 2000s with Tom Cruise. So Minority Report, you get his War of the Worlds movie, which isn't great. But then you also get these like little sort of like dramas, like Bridge of Spies and like Munich and stuff like that, which I would also be pretty into. Like those are pretty, pretty crazy sort of suspenseful movies. You would, funnily enough, get some World War II stuff. So you could get some reprints from the Heroes of World War II set, because he did 1941, which is obviously about the battle for the Battle of Pearl Harbor. So you get a little bit of, you get a little bit of some neat crossover there. And then obviously you'd get E.T., the extraterrestrial, not a bad hit, not a bad pickup. So yeah, Steven Spielberg, he would be pretty good one. I feel like there's like, if I went through, I could think of all of the different directors who would give you just like a cross section of neat stuff. And I don't know what I would be most interested in, but yeah.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. Yeah.
Okay, are you ready for my last one? This
Yeah.
one is I was really the part in Dune where he drinks the water of life and has just like the next level and he can see the future and all the rest of it. This is what I was like considering my last one. Here's my thinking. Magic has been going for these bottom of the barrel sort of IPs, right? Marvel will license to anybody, right? TMNT licensed to just anybody. It's so easy to get sort of that stuff in and that stuff done. What I think they need to do in order to rescue Universes Beyond as a concept is go for prestige, go for the highest quality stuff that they could find. And I would probably define that as the most inaccessible thing, right? What is the one IP that would just never license to Magic, and that's who they should go for their their pinnacle of all Universes Beyond set. So I had the idea Universes Beyond the Reserved List, which would be going beyond the universe of the Magic the Gathering universe to the cards that Magic has said they would never ever reprint ever, which includes a number of different legends from Legends, as well as incredibly powerful staples getting reprints like Gaia's Cradle and Yawgmoth's Will, one of which I think actually Yawgmoth's Will might be banned. But if I were Magic and I were thinking about just the most incredible Universes Beyond that you could possibly make, it would be to go beyond the reserved list. So that's my simple pitch.
I feel like the way you do this, like just be the biggest jackass possible, is it's like, instead of Black Lotus, it's Black Lotus, Magic card, and you play it, and it says create a token named Black Lotus with the ability, sacrifice to like generate 3 mana, right? Like,
yeah, I was thinking about that. I was thinking that if they went for this, first of all, you would need to do sort of all new art for, like all new art and like Oracle text for some of these cards. But then you would do a bunch of stuff. You just do like a bunch of stuff. You would find a bunch of sort of like neat little, like odds and ends and bump them up with kind of like modern flavor. So for instance, I was looking through the reserved list and I was like, okay, what are some cool cards that I would want, to make better or more interesting? There's a card from Mirage on the reserve called Avenging Angel, which is 3 white. It's an angel flying. If Avenging Angel is put into any graveyard from play, which is weird because it would never go to any graveyard but yours, you may put Avenging Angel on top of owner's library. Obviously, a pretty dog shit card. Nobody would really ever play this one, I don't think. But I bet you could find like a neat riff on cards like this to do sort of cool things. There's a bunch of legends that are on the reserved list that I think could probably sort of like use this treatment. So for instance, there's one called Halfdane that is one a blue, a black, and a white. So one in an Esper for a 4-mana shapeshifter. At the beginning of your upkeep, change Halfdane's base power and toughness to the power and toughness of target creature other than Halfdane until the end of your next upkeep. It's pretty boring. It's a pretty boring commander. Just like not a lot going on there. But like you could definitely do some stuff where you have a sort of clone commander that is coming in these sort of like Esper colors and is copying, you know, like power and toughness. And so I would use this as an opportunity where I would go like Halfdane, you know, Tolarian shapeshifter or something like that. And he would have this ability to clone stuff more proactively. And whenever a clone enters the battlefield, or whenever have a creature enter the battlefield as this, it can also clone an additional thing, just like a million different ideas like that. Anyway, that's my most unhinged pitch. What do you think?
I think that's a neat. I think you could also do like fun meta stuff with this too, like maybe pull in, like some unset cards and like reskin them as like black border cards, right? Like rename Alexander Hamilton to like I don't know, Clam General or something like that, right? Like and
Yeah.
and put put it in black border or something like that, or like use this as an excuse to pull in some like Through the Omen Paths cards type deal, which would be fun. I think this is a neat idea to kind of like the I think the joke until it comes out is going to be like, this is actually what like what's this set that's coming out later this year that's like Rift Wild or whatever, something like that.
Oh, reality fracture.
Reality fracture, right? Like I feel like every kind of like a meta idea that we could come up with is gonna be like, and that's actually what reality fracture is going to be. But I actually think that is a hilarious and fun idea, and I think that there's. I think the only issue you're going to run into is like we all think of like the Power 9 or whatever, but like there's a bunch of like not so fun or like boring cards in there that just aren't gonna work. I for one would welcome the return of Shahrazad, or however you say it, just because
Shahrazad. There is an episode of, I think, Commander at Home where Ben Brode, who was the game director on Hearthstone for a long time and then went to make Marvel Snap, he plays a commander deck where it is the entire commander banned list, which includes Power 9 cards. And he has anti cards in there because all of the anti cards are on the banned list. And he antes, and when you ante, you like reveal the top card of your library, it goes into the ante or whatever, and he antes an original Scheherazade.
Jeez.
Yeah, exactly.
All right, man. All right. You have anything else you want to say this, or should I move on to
No, that's it. That's honestly, that's the bit. There you go.
All right. Mine is mine I think is pretty unhinged. It is a real world one. We have already had 2 sets set in New York City. And so I think we need to go to the most important thing about New York City in the past, 30 years. And so we're going to do Universes Beyond 9/11.
I just elbowed Orion.
I'm sorry, Orion. But the idea here is just kind of, it's what it says on the tin. I think there's just like, it's such a defining moment for like the world. Frankly, one of the things that popped into my head is like, you could reprint Plummet and just put that picture of that guy. Yeah. As part of the set. The chat, okay, Charles says, go on. Fuel tokens.
Okay, I have a question. In your 9/11 Universes Beyond set, is there a card for Seth MacFarlane, the creator of Family Guy? Because famously, he was scheduled for the flight, one of the flights that ended up getting hijacked and flying into the World Trade Center, but he missed his flight due to a hangover and narrowly survived. Is he gonna be is Seth MacFarlane, lucky survivor, going to be a playable commander in your
So
9/11 Universes Beyond set.
there are 1,000 stories like that, and so I don't think it's just Seth MacFarlane. I think you have a card that's like um, what would I call it? Something like like uh for fortuitous scheduling mishap, right? And it's like target creature gains like indestructible until end of turn or something like that,
Oh
right?
no, you know what it would be? It would be like relentless rats or like persistent petitioners, where you could have a ton of them in your deck. Because you're right, there are 1,000 stories like that, so you could have a whole deck centered on that as a concept.
Another one I was thinking of was like a card called Let's Roll, and it's how you have like that destroy target attacking creature effect in white.
Uh-huh.
You do that, but it's as an alternative cost for this card, you may sacrifice a non-token creature or something like that, and and destroy target attacking creature. What other ones was I thinking of? We can get into discussions about like what the colors for like I think George W. Bush is like a white red commander. Uh, um,
Are all of the hijackers named in? Are they all named legendaries? Do you think?
oh man.
Charles in the chat says yes.
Yes. Osama bin Laden peaceful.
God. What about the one guy's passport? Because one of the hijackers, his passport fell, or whatever, and like they just found it on the streets of New York City. Is that going to be like an artifact or something?
Yeah, I was thinking that like the I like you do a lot of moments. I don't know if like the characters I think just have to be all of kind of like the leaders, because the hijackers I don't think are recognizable enough for that those to actually work as cards. Or you do something like where it is like a hijacker, but like you get like alternate art for like the different the different perpetrators or something like that. But yeah, that is that's about probably as
okay.
Oh, that was the other one I wanted to call out was Steve Buscemi. I think is a card, right? Like famously, rejoins the FDNY. Because Charles reminded me of this when he said the FDNY station had like 95% mortality, right? Like there you could do like so many of these. You could pull. There are a bunch of kind of like aspirational cards in the history of Magic that you could pull out and just like put art on, right? Like I'm sure there's like together as united we stand or something like. I'm sure that's a Magic card or something
Heroic
like
intervention.
Yeah,
like those kinds of cards. Yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, that is my most unhinged Universes Beyond.
Deeply unhinged. Do you have any honorable mentions? I have a couple of honorable mentions that I just want to like rapid fire through, and but did you have others that you were thinking about?
Why don't you go? Because I had some that there are movies that I went through my head. I was like, no, this could actually be a set type of deal.
In my World War II pitch, I did talk to Rachel quite extensively about whether or not I would want to do the Nazi Germany with Iron Stars, or if I would really want to lean into it, maybe partner with the Holocaust Memorial or something and try and do a Holocaust set where you have legendary land like Auschwitz. Would be a little wild. Another one I had that I thought would be a good Universes Beyond set, Porn Stars, and you would call it Gooniverses Beyond.
I thought of that one too.
Was all, that's all that I thought. Well, I just like the idea. One that I really loved is Warcraft. I would really like to see a Universes Beyond set for Warcraft, specifically because they would run into the exact same contract dispute that they did with Spider-Man, and it would force them to do universes within Heroes of Warcraft, which I think would be fucking hilarious.
Through the Omen Paths, Warcraft is just Warhammer fantasy cards.
Fantasy. Yeah, exactly. Yes, beautiful.
In the chat, we've got Judy saying Mel Brooks the first. I think that's great, actually. Right? Like
Mel Brooks the first would actually be amazing. I had one that was just Universes Beyond, like public domain, and you just look for every like recognizable public domain character and you put all of them into a set, because I really love the idea that you're drafting like Jack the Ripper versus Sherlock Holmes versus King Arthur versus Paul Bunyan. I just think all of those together would be really fucking sweet. That would be a sweet ass set.
So
God, fuck.
I think that's a neat idea. I think Charles and Chess, they already have it with Mystery Set and Sherlock. I think the issue there is that like a lot of those things already have cards that just kind of like references instead of being directly named, right? Like Beanstalk Giant is a card, right? Like it's not Jack and the Beanstalk, specifically.
That's fair. Yeah, it's like the Greek gods are already sort of represented in Magic through
Right.
Theros, right?
Right,
Theros is the Greek set, right? Yeah, I definitely feel that, right? Like Kaldheim, you wouldn't want to do Norse. They already have their sort of like XPs for.
Plus, we already have some Greek gods via the God of War Secret Lair.
Mm-hmm. One of them that I was thinking is that you would do universes beyond the DC universe, but it would specifically be the DC extended universe, and then you would do a second follow-up set that's universes beyond the DC universe, the Snyder cut, where all of the cards would be in black and white, and there would be lots of blood tokens everywhere. Parks and Rec, similar to The Office. I actually thought that you could do The Simpsons would probably be the best. If I was going to go for an animated comedy, I thought about this a lot. I was thinking about American Dad, Family Guy, just a million of these sitcoms, right? Friends, Cheers. I was just thinking about a million of these. The Simpsons would be amazing. The Simpsons has a whole sprawling universe, right, of characters who are really like memorable and episodes and all this other kind of stuff. I think that that would be the best version, I think, of a sitcom universes beyond.
So, Charles is naming a bunch of shows in the chat, and I think those would be good for secret lairs, right? I could see a Parks and Rec secret lair being like a real thing. I don't think there's enough material to do a full set on it. But I think these ones you're putting up, like Anchorman, would be a great Universes Beyond set, or not Universes Beyond set, Universes Beyond Secret Lair.
I actually think Will Ferrell, to use your like director actor idea, Will Ferrell would be an excellent
Will Ferrell-verse,
yeah, like Will Ferrell verse. You get a ton of really killer stuff, because you'd get that whole stretch of those Judd Apatow movies, but you'd also get a bunch of like SNL kind of type stuff, which is just really good and kind of compelling. You get stuff like Zoolander, right? There's a lot of gold to mine by doing a whole set around Will Ferrell.
Yeah, Charles Charles in the chat says, when I was doing this earlier, I ran into it was, one, will it happen at one point, and two, this would make a better secret lair. I was thinking about a lot of anime shows. I'm like, these could happen, right? Like a JJK Universes Beyond set could happen. A Boku no Hero Academia set could happen, right? Like I think those are like real things that are on the table within like the realm of realities. You didn't want to bring any of them up, or like Marathon was the thing. Which is the thing I'll be talking about in a little while. It's like, oh, you could do the different corporations that you run contracts for as like different like Ravenica guilds almost. But that's the thing I could see that could be real. So I didn't want to bring it up.
Yeah, I had a number of other.
Real quick, Charles the Chess says Star Trek almost certainly will. Star Trek has been announced, Charles. That is happening.
Yeah, Star Trek is later this year. It is the final set in 2026. This is a good one. Buddy Too Afraid to pitch Steve Irwin in Memorandum. I did love the Steve Irwin in Memorandum set, specifically because you could just do a bunch of weird ass fucking animals. Love that idea for a set. One of the ones we also talked about was Sesame Street. Amazing idea for a set. Sesame Street gives you access to stuff like the Muppets, but just the idea of like Big Bird as a commander or like the Count as a commander. Love that. Also, I have a new one, which is Mamma Mia. You know what? Excellent answer. I would love to do a Mamma Mia set. Some of the two normal ones that I considered, I was thinking about doing Warhammer Fantasy. I was thinking about my first one. I was like, what's the normal one I'm going to pitch? I was thinking about doing Warhammer Fantasy because I frankly love Warhammer Fantasy, and just sitting and thinking about what that set would look like and what the color combinations would be and all that stuff. I could do that all fucking day, but I decided that was a little too normal. Another one, Game of Thrones. I thought about doing a Game of Thrones one. But I also just think that's too fucking normal. I did think about ancient Rome. In fact, my original pitch for the II one was going to be a millennial dads versus set where it's ancient Rome versus World War II, because there's that meme about like when you get older you choose one or the other, but I decided that concept was a little bit too crazy. And I also did think about Christianity.
I did too.
But my thing with Christianity as a Universes Beyond set is that I would have it be a multi-block version. So you would have the Old Testament, the New Testament, and then the Book of Mormon. As my
Interesting.
as
I
my
would say
individual sense.
you could just do the Bible, right? Like,
Yeah.
as like a, there's plenty of stories in there, right? Like, Commander Job, just like, has to like, do nothing for like, you sacrifice a bunch of creature, and then after a couple of turns, like gets
Yeah, I was
everything
also
back.
thinking that you would have denominations as sort of like, not quite factions, but a little bit like factions, in the same way you have like the Guilds of Ravnica. You'd have the Catholic Church versus the Evangelicals versus, the Baptists versus the Mormons. I was trying to think about what the different denominations I would choose. Like, you obviously have to have the Catholic. You have to have some version of like Catholic and like
The
core
problem,
Catholic, core Protestants, but
so Charles in the chat says, like, I think you could just do all Abrahamic religions. The problem with doing this or like the sex Christianity is assigning colors to any of these things would just be like a fucking minefield, right? Like, um, unless you like intentionally bring in like, oh, the Satanists are, black, red because they're doing that on purpose.
one that I was thinking of, I went on a whole tangent of literary classics where I was like, well, what should Magic do to get more representation in a female audience? And my answer for that was Universes Beyond Jane Eyre, because obviously Jane Eyre, all of the uh the all of the Jane Eyre, or wait, Jane Eyre. Who am I thinking? Jane Austen.
Yeah,
Jane Austen is what I'm thinking. Because all of those books, like appeal to women. I thought about Twilight for the same reason. I was like, Beyond Twilight, just gonna get the girlies in there. I really love the idea that there's an artifact called the Cuck Tent, because of famous plot point in Twilight where I actually think it's the second book where Jacob cucks Edward by getting to like warm up Bella or something fucking stupid like that. And then the last one, the one that I'll leave you is I was thinking about literary shared universes. I was like, what literary works of fiction could I point to that have a gigantic shared universe? And the answer I came up with was Universes Beyond William Faulkner, because all of his stories take place in that made up county in, I think, Mississippi. But all of the books have connectors to all of the other books, so it's sort of like the Marvel Cinematic Universe, like fucking highbrow. And I just think that Universes Beyond, As I Lay Dying, and The Sound and the Fury would be sweet. So there you go.
So the version of that might actually happen is Stephen King verse, right? Like,
oh man,
Universes Beyond Maine, right? Like,
yeah, where you get like the weird ass turtle from it, and would you get like the Stand and all of that stuff with the Dark Tower?
The Dark Tower is the central piece, and almost a bunch of the other books reference it, right? The Stand is not part of the Dark Tower core series, but the villain in the Stand, I believe, is supposed to be a version of one of the villains in like it ties back into the Dark Tower, as does Insomnia. There's like, back when the Dark Tower movie, I don't know if you remember this, but when the Dark Tower
movie with Idris Elba, we had that whole episode. You read all of the books.
Yes, yeah. No, this is me. Like, this is what I'm talking about, right? Like, I read all of the core books, and then I also read like 1,000 of the, it felt like 30 of these tertiary books.
I actually, Universes Beyond Tom Clancy's a great idea. Another one I had that was an idea was Universes Beyond John Grisham. But the thing that I would do, so John Grisham writes these legal thrillers in the 90s. A bunch of them get turned into movies, like The Pelican Brief and The Firm, and the one that Francis Ford Coppola did that I can't remember, Rainmaker. That was a John Grisham sort of legal drama. The thing that you do with these John Grisham legal adaptations is you make the most intentionally confusing cards out of them that just have the most esoteric rules reflections because the game is less about winning the game of Magic and it's more about proving that you understand the legalese that is Magic the Gathering. That would be a really sweet set, just the most complicated fucking Magic rules of all time.
In the chat, Charles asked, "Did I like the Dark Tower?" I think it was like past the third or the fourth book. I thought it got very stupid, and I didn't like most of the secondary novels I read as well. I think I liked Insomnia. That was like the one that I really liked. I was actually very disappointed because it gets very dumb after like the third or fourth book with like time, like speaking of 9/11, right? Like involve like there's a plot point about them traveling through time to store an item in a locker inside the World Trade Center before 9/11, right? Like there's also a plot point about like them meeting Stephen King as a character in his book, as he is about to like get hit by the car that hit him in Maine in real life. I think it's something like the characters stop him from getting killed by it or something like that. And
Wow.
it is. I think it's ridiculous. I am not a Stephen King fan, and that was like the Dark Tower was my first exposure to Stephen King, and the first book I really liked. The second book I also really liked, and I forget where it started to get bad, but I just don't think it's. I don't read Stephen King anymore.
Fair enough. Okay, well, I guess that wraps all of our crazy. Oh, sorry, go for it.
One more, just because you got it in my head. Universes Beyond Dr. Seuss, I think would be a killer.
Oh, that would be so good, wouldn't it? You would get a ton. Yertle the Turtle, Horton Hears a Fuck, man. There's a million.
Yeah.
That would be really excellent.
The Lorax who speaks for the trees, right? Like,
Yeah, the Lorax would be like a green-red creature or something like that.
And the one slur can be like the blue-black,
The one slur. Oh.
Thneeda's equipment, yeah.
The Grinch. I mean, the Grinch would be a spectacular magic card. I would love to make a Grinch tribal, like Christmas tribal sort of for token green eggs and ham.
Did Rachel walk into the room to type food token green eggs?
Yes, yeah. Rachel is like figuring out, like cleaning out our living room because we got a bunch of new furniture, and so we're moving it all around in preparation for tomorrow's D&D game, and came in here to type that into the chat. So
fantastic.
Okay, well, listen, tell me about your week. Tell me about Marathon. I'm really interested. I did not play any Marathon because obviously the WoW expansion came out and I couldn't be fucking bothered. So I just want to hear all about Marathon.
I am very much enjoying Marathon. It is one of the things I've said I've wanted, which is like diverse loot, very cool build systems, bungee shooting, which is great. The only problem I have with it is like it really is like a team, like it's best put into squads, and right now it's just me and Monik playing it, and so it's like the way I want to put this is I'm considering paying to win, and by that I mean buying copies for friends who are not yet playing but who have expressed interest, so we can get a third. Because the problem is like some of these, like there is a quest, the second quest for Sakaguchi Genetics is this. It's on the third map, which is this map called Outpost, and to get into the center, which is the pinwheel, it is like it's not quite as bad as a Destiny raid, but it is like that level of mechanics. You have to like collect a bunch of different access cards, or you have to shoot a bunch of stuff on the outside of the building. And people have been figuring this out, but like it's not as complicated as a Destiny raid mechanic, but you have to do it while people are trying to kill you. And so like the second step for the Sakaguchi quest is like you have to kill 2 of these enemies and pick up their combat data and get into the pinwheel and then get a thing out of the pinwheel and get it to like this extraction point. You don't actually have to extract with it. There's like a separate thing you can just extract the item for. It's like yesterday I put in like, I want to say close to a dozen attempts on this. And it's like, I got the cards and then I spent a couple things trying to figure out how to get into the pinwheel organically. And I went and looked it up. And it's just like, I cannot get this done and get into the pinwheel and get out by myself just because someone's there to shoot me, right? Like, and the AI is super hard. And this is fine for like with the squad. It's fine because if you go down, someone can pick you up, right? Like, and that is honestly the hardest part about this is like you can deal with, and there isn't really any scaling down of the AI enemies who are very tough, right? They're not quite as, I would say, they're not quite as um they feel different than the Arc Raiders enemies in that they feel a little bit more like WoW mobs in that like they don't kind of hunt you as much, although they are pretty smart, but like they stay in kind of like their areas, and it's um pretty easy to outrun them if you know what you're doing and like get around them. Um, but it's but they're hard to deal with, and you should be dodging them most of the time. And if you're just one person, it's hard to deal with like even a handful of them at a time. Like the number of times that I've died by having like, getting into a room and knocking down two or three different robots, and then the third one appears out of nowhere and hits me in the back of the head and knocks me over, and then I can't do anything because I can't get myself back up. Is, you know, been frustratingly a lot. But it's still a ton of fun, right? Like earlier this morning, I did a run where I was just hunting other people, and I got like 3 kills, like snuck over to an extract, and I'm playing the assassin shell. This is part of the thing that I really like about it too. Is there are like 5 or 6 distinct regular shells, and then the rook shell is like its kind of own thing, which is like a scav hunt. I snuck over to the extract, and someone else had called it. And it's there are extracts that like call in a bunch of enemies to fight, and he was fighting those enemies, and I just smoked in and like stole the extract from him, and it felt fucking great, right? Like I was like, I am fucking, a god, and then immediately the next game I got shot in like 15 seconds into the match, right? Like, so it is a ton of fun. It is definitely more hardcore than Arc Raiders. I would say it's not quite as hard, or from my understanding, I've not played a lot of Tarkov, is not as quite as hardcore as Tarkov. And there's just so much texture to it that I really enjoy it, and I would, I'm going to be playing a lot of it. It's just, like you said, I'm also torn between this and Midnight, because there's a bunch of Midnight content to consume. Like right before we got on this, I finished the Zolomon quest line, and I am level 89, and I need to get up there so I can get my delves done, and I can start farming heroic equipment and la-di-da and all that jazz.
The delves are pretty excellent. Yeah, the thing that I've been hearing about Marathon, which I think is kind of interesting, is that it is sort of more like COD, I guess, in a weird way, compared to Arc Raiders. Basically, I was like reading essentially. I don't remember if it was on Twitter or Blue Sky, but I was just like reading a kind of tweet thread where somebody said something comparing it to Arc Raiders, and they were just going back and forth with people in the kind of in the replies. And I think it's neat, the idea that the guns are more sort of refined, and like varied, and I want to say like shootier. Do you know what I
Yeah.
mean?
Yeah.
Basically, the point that the person was sort of making is like in Arc Raiders, all of the guns kind of feel jank in a way because they are literally sort of like jank, and also it helps with sort of like their time to kill and stuff like that. Whereas in Marathon, they kind of compared it to, I guess they were talking about Overwatch and COD, where it was like really, really slick, clean sort of guns in comparison to sort of these, like I don't know, janky, put together sort of like builds. And I was thinking about that as like a texture thing is kind of neat and interesting, right? Like the idea that one of them has sort of like depowered guns because they are, like whatever, in universe scrap, and the other one has slicker guns. But I don't know. That was just one Twitter thread. I don't know if you agree or disagree.
That is absolutely true. I do think part of it too is that the game feels different as you kind of like, I'm not very far up the loot ladder, but I can already feel the changes, right? Like the builds get more crazy the higher tier loot you have, and like something as simple as like having a higher tier shield. Like I found my first blue shield earlier today, and the amount of survivability it gives you above the green like the free stuff is white, and the common tier is green. Like that level of survivability, like that step up, makes the game feel very different and makes it feel a little bit less unforgiving. If like you're facing the wrong way with a white shield, you'll be down before you can turn around, right? Like, and just that little bit more of survivability, I think, really changes the way the game feels. And I think, the thing I'm afraid of is that's going to be too much of a hurdle for like most people to get through before they like start, like, before you get to the good stuff is the way I would put it. And also just kind of like, it's hard to kind of feel my way around when I'm supposed, like, the reward structure and like when I'm supposed to be taking risks and when I'm not. I was like, I will do a bunch of runs with free kits and just jump in and not super care so much, right? Like, the thing that really got to me yesterday was like, I was like in my second or third attempt for this quest I still haven't finished. I was like, okay, I'll put on some moderate but not great gear. But I load in, I start running, I know where I need to go. I point in that direction, I start walking that way, and I hop over a ledge and I don't realize it, but it's like outside of the map and I fell off and I immediately die. I'm like, fuck this, right? Like, I've lost all of my gear instantaneously. I'm just going to run free kits for a while. And that felt good as a learning experience, but I also feel like the problem is going to be that people are going to be too tempted to do that kind of constantly, at least for a while. When I think you really should be spending some of your gear a little bit more aggressively. The thing is that like, I think the incentive structure is not to do that in solos because like, our creators, I think solos is pretty well, is a pretty well comparable to trios in terms of like doability. Solos is like just, it's very hard to kind of do a full, like a real run. I feel like with solos in marathon, and so
yeah, that was something else I was reading. Like I said in the tweets and skates or whatever, people were talking about how kind of permissive the gear was, that you just kind of I don't know, people were not holding on to things. They were just kind of spending it pretty freely because the ability to get, I guess, I don't know what a sponsored kit is, but the ability to get sponsored kits sort of means that, you should just push, right? You should just go in with your best stuff every time, which was pretty markedly different, right? Like when we were doing Arc Raiders, I was definitely not pushing every time. I was like leaving some of my stuff in the vault so that I could come in with a really strong loadout for like the times where we wanted that to be a thing. So
a sponsored kit is the like I think it's 6 factions in the game. Each like rotating per day, one will be free, and they will give you a kit that is free, and it has like a standard set of things, and you can use it kind of infinitely, and you don't get a ton of like, you get like a very basic gun, no shield, and like so something just a mechanic to mention I think is very cool is there are consumables that if you extract with them, they will just get sold. They cannot, they are like degraded, and so they can't come out with you. And so like these sponsored kits will have all like, temporary weak medicine, shield kits and medicine kits, rather than any of the real stuff in it. And so that's pretty, like, I think if you're consistently running with a team, I think it's fine to just push gear. The problem is running solo, you can't do that. And also filling, I do not feel confident doing that because, it's a roll of the dice who you're loading in with. You might get a couple of jokers, you might get a couple of really smart guys, or like even when I've been playing with Monic, like, if the third guy just decides to do whatever he wants to do, then, it's like, well, I guess we're following him because otherwise we are going to fucking die, right? Like,
yeah,
because there's no duos mode at the moment. But yeah, but it's a ton of fun, and I am very much enjoying it, and it is definitely going to be heavily played over the next couple of weeks.
okay, well, hell yeah. I have not been doing basically anything except for midnight, which it was funny. We were talking about this on Friday because you came over to my house and we played Commander and stuff like that. And we were talking about how like WoW has sort of hit this stride where it is things are not different, they are just different. Which is to say that like the structure of everything seems basically exactly the same. It is just that the content is different in the sense of you are doing raids and dungeons and delves and world events, but what those delves are, that's the different part. What those dungeons are, that's the different part. What the world events are, that's the different part, kind of thing. It was pretty interesting because I've been thinking a lot about the War Within in a weird way. I was doing a lot of midnight, and I was kind of doing this like retrospective of like where do I think the Within sort of falls, and frankly it's not that high in my like probably personal list of like favorite WoW expansions, but at the same time I do really love the structure. So I don't think the content was great in World Within, but it was better than Dragonflight. Dragonflight I actually think had maybe some of the worst like going on like 2 or 3 years afterwards, right? And but Midnight has been very satisfying so far. Like the world events on Midnight, abundance is amazing, not just because of my avowed libness, right, but just because it's mindless and stupid, and you get into a big group and everybody starts lagging out because the game is just like aggressively trying to process the most numbers as possible. I really like, have you done the party yet?
No.
The world event in Eversong Woods is called like Saltheral's Party. And it is sort of like the Revendreth, which is done for Back from the Beyond, probably. Like the Revendreth anima, like the unique feature that they have.
Mm.
Do you know what I'm talking about?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
It's like that, but you are appealing to the interior Eversong. So you're appealing to Murder Row, the Farstriders, the Magisters, and the Blood Knights, which are like these four big kind of like factions inside of the, like inside of like Blood Elf Society. And that's just so sweet. I just really love the way it kind of into sort of like lore and stuff like that. So the content, it's all the same, but it's all different. That's kind of what Midnight, it's kind of what Midnight feels like at the moment. I will say I fucking hate portals. I am so annoyed that two of the zones, Herondar and Voidstorm, are accessible via portals. I just think this is so fucking stupid. I want to fly to the zones. It is neat to fly out of the city and go to Eversong Woods and fly out of the city and go to Zulaman. It fucking sucks to go to a fucking portal. I hate it so much, and it makes me hate those zones more than the other two for no apparent reasons. But we'll probably like talk more about Midnight impressions in a future podcast episode.
Yep. The only thing I will say about it is I am at this. This happens a lot. I think with these expansions, it's like this sour spot where like I am finally out leveled my previous expansion gear, and so I start feeling very weak around like level 86, 87, and like it's like okay, well, I guess I gotta climb up. It just feels, because everything scales with you, right?
Yeah.
It feels bad to be like, oh, I'm fucking owning everything real hard, and then at level 87 it's like, well, I guess you start falling off, and that's because your gear is no longer above what you're expected to be.
Yeah.
I guess it's just kind of the consequence of it, but it is what it is. It just feels bad, man.
Yeah, certainly. I don't know. Certainly annoying. I definitely agree. I felt that way about professions, to be honest with you. I for a long time on Baron, I've been repairing all of my own gear. I haven't paid a repair bill on Baron eons, right? And now I have to pay repair bills again because I have to level up all of my blacksmithing to the final thing in the circle, and the final note of that circle is you can repair this slot. So first we're going to do belts, and then we're going to do boots, and then we're going to do helm or whatever, and eventually I'll be able to repair all my own gear again. It's going to take forever, and that sucks.
I would say I don't know how it is for the other professions, but the kind of skilling up for engineering feels pretty brutal.
Really?
Because you have to, like, one of the ways you get like these core components is you recycle, and you can recycle from materials from any profession, but it's like I have to make like 5 gears and then recycle them to get 1 ever core, which is like the basis of a ton of things. And so if I don't have enough material for 5 of a thing, I don't have enough to kind of like build the more advanced recipes. And it felt kind of aggravating. Maybe it'll feel better now. I've been just like mining and haven't been engineering for like a day or so.
Yeah, I went pretty deep on blacksmithing as normal. So I did my 3 blacksmiths. One to do alloys, and basically Baron does armor, Tonrik does weapons, and then I have one that does everything. And blacksmithing is basically the exact same. It doesn't really feel all that different, except for they got rid of a system that was in the War Within. But then I did leatherworking. Leatherworking is a little wild. They changed skinning to finally sort of match the other gathering professions, because what they did is they made it so that certain like skinnable targets will give you like 10 times the amount of leather, and they're marked on your mini map. So in the same way you fly around and look for mining nodes, you fly around and look for these high value sort of like beasts or whatever, which I actually think is pretty sweet. And then I also did tailoring and engineering. Tailoring is kind of fine. Or I'm sorry, tailoring and enchanting. Tailoring is kind of fine. I haven't done much with enchanting yet. I'm mostly just disenchanting kind of everything. I'm selling a lot of stuff on the AH just because Nat's prices are just going to be high for a while, and I want to take advantage of that. And I started engineering, but I haven't really pumped it at all, so I just haven't seen any of the contours of it. Besides that, I don't know. We played Magic, we played D&D. Do you have any hot takes of Magic last night?
Yeah, it was 2 nights ago, but
Oh yeah, 2 nights ago. Yeah, you're right.
yeah, no,
I actually thought those were great games. Those in my mind. The second game, obviously, I ran away with. The first game was a really brutal back and forth, which you won on Jasper, which I thought was really awesome. And the third game, I probably would have been annoyed if that third game happened earlier in the night, but because it was our last game of the night, and Josh just kind of goes, "Okay, I think I just win," and he demonstrated an infinite combo, and we were all like, "Okay," and I was sort of fine. I was like, "Yeah, this is great." Unfortunately, my good friend Sarian couldn't get a big W that night, but hey, he's got time.
Yeah, I mean he can be satisfied with like beating up on Stiltskin, the secret stacks deck, right? Like
Yeah, that realization that Stiltskin is kind of a stacks deck was pretty funny to me. I don't know. I also loved that Jasper game. That Jasper game was incredible. I actually think that game, under a lot of other circumstances, like in a more normal pod, I would have won that game, but it was specifically the interaction of Jasper that like destroyed my ability to kind of lock down the game with Ketramos, because once I had that thing where he was hexproof, he's natively indestructible, and I had the thing where like all damage I get dealt gets like dealt to him, and then whenever he gets dealt damage, I heal that much life or whatever. That's like a lock that a lot of decks I just don't think can escape. Like AC, for instance, or like a more straightforward battle cruiser type deck probably just can't get out of that kind of lock. Or maybe they have like one or two cards and they just have to kind of fish for the whole for the whole game to sort of find it. But I was in that game, I was trying to use that lock to like barely stay above water, which was really interesting and fun, because Jasper is
it wasn't Jasper, it was Jasper stealing Josh's cards, right? Like
no, this is exactly my point. The thing that makes Jasper so great is that it can use other opponents' decks, and it digs really hard, and you can find really awesome answers, right? Like it just shows you so much more of a deck, which I just think is so sweet.
Yeah, it's kind of like Takasia, but for other people's decks.
Like, yes, actually. It's sort of like an offensive Takasia, where instead of digging in your own deck, you're digging in deck, which is sweet. That deck is so awesome.
Yeah, no, I really, like I said, I want to get, I think I'm going to get a real version of Jasper and then get somebody to alter it to be Rango, because I want to call it Rango, even though you are right. He is more like the villain in Rango, but like
yeah, rattlesnake Jake or whatever.
Yeah.
I also just think that kind of outlaws as a theme, sort of like outlaw typal, is just a sweet. It reminds me actually. Maybe the thing it reminds me most of is Eureka. Like Eureka is a typal deck, but it's a very specific kind of typal deck where ninjas are doing this ninjutsu, in and out kind of attacking thing from your hand, and the mercenaries feel that way, right? Whereas like normal typal decks, right, like zombies, elves, dinosaurs, whatever. Like these are just decks where it's like, well, I play a million elves and I give them all +8 and attack for the win, right? Like, those are very straightforward sort of deck experiences. Whereas, I don't know, losing to Jasper feels awesome. That deck is very awesome to play against.
I would say something that you want to highlight is like I like the outlaw thing because it's like we were talking about how like roaming throne is just kind of like the best card for tribal decks, but outlaw isn't a tribe, right? Like outlaw
Yeah.
is like it's like these 4 different types count as outlaws, and so like you can't really throw a roaming throne in there and have it like work the way you want it to. Um, I mean, you could
True.
probably do it like double ping on Jasper, but like I don't think it's worth it. Like, um, and so I think that feels a little bit better because you get like that kind of like, oh, we're all the same theme, but it's not like we're all exactly the same. So we're using all of these kind of like tribal tools, these generic tribal tools, which I think is like I think there are too many kind of like command banner type, Horn of Victory or whatever. There's like a half dozen of these cards that are like, oh well, I'm running a tribal deck. Let's throw them all in and pick elf, pick bunnies, right? Like bunnies is I think my most tribal deck at the moment. So,
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah,
Okay. Well, I guess that's that.
yeah. All right. Well, if you would like to email us about any of the things we talked about on this podcast, you email somedirtsplaygames@gmail.com or podcast@somedirtsplaygames.com. You could email or you can watch us on YouTube and Twitch where these go out live. There will be links down in the description. Rate us wherever you find podcasts. Buddy, you have anything you're looking to promote?
I don't think that there's anything I'm looking to promote right this minute because we just did. I don't know, man. I took the week off for midnight, so I'm not thinking about work stuff. So yeah.
Hello, Rachel. Just appears in the background at the end of the show.
Yeah, for sure.
Until next time, loyal listeners.
Okay, until next time, dear listeners.
I said it backwards, didn't I?